BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. This episode of Black Box Online Radio is brought to you by Rep Sports and Raze Energy. Are you a fan of energy drinks, protein shakes, and health foods? Well, I sure am. I use the stuff almost every single day. They sell Raze Energy products at my local gym, but you can have them shipped to your home. Use the coupon code NED075, that's NED075, for discounts applied at the checkout. The link is in the description box. Okay, hello everybody, welcome to the show. Today I'm going to be talking all about the serial killer Dennis Rader, who was perhaps more well known as BTK, standing for Bind, Torture, and Kill. There is a video of him on YouTube that is rather popular called Btk Confession full version, and lately the YouTube algorithm has been absolutely begging me to watch this one. It's coming up in all kinds of suggested feed and videos, so I decided to give it a watch, and here is the response. Dennis Lynn Rader was a serial killer who was born on March 9th of 1945, and he is still currently alive at the time of this episode. He is presently 77 years old. He was convicted for 10 murders, but with serial killers, almost always there is a possibility that they have committed additional crimes that do not get added into the body count, or sometimes there is always just a little bit of speculation about what they actually did in their criminal lives, because not all criminals tell the truth. And you might be thinking that that is a very big Captain Obvious statement, but it's really not. Some people are conventionally evil individuals, and they openly brag about their criminal exploits. They openly want the world to know that, yes, I did all of these crimes, and they don't want anyone thinking that they did something that they didn't actually commit. They want only the truth to be out there. And then there are the other types of conventionally evil people who are total liars, who are just frauds and will say all kinds of things that are not true. But I also want to point out that there is a Zodiac Killer BTK connection, a theory involving Dennis Rader in the Zodiac Killer murders that took place in 1968 and 69, whereas the BTK murders took place in and around 1974 going until 1991. And I'll be talking about the Zodiac Killer BTK connection later this weekend on the channel, so please feel free to like and subscribe to Black Box Online Radio so you can follow along with all of these true crime discussions. And if there's anything that you would like covered on the channel in the true crime world, absolutely any subject is fair game. You can put your idea in the comments section down below. But to discuss this video, BTK Confession full version, it was uploaded in 2005, and it was recorded in 2005, and the description is BTK killer Dennis Rader gives a dramatic televised confession on June 27, 2005, in which he described killing 10 people. This is the complete unabridged version. Throughout the video, Dennis Rader is giving a very big window into the world of being a serial killer, how a serial killer thinks, how a serial killer operates, and it doesn't appear that he is giving any of the telltale signs of deception, meaning when he is sharing things, it's quite difficult to tell if he was trying to be matter of fact or if he was simply trying to brag about his criminal exploits, expecting that he was caught, he was going to go to jail for a long time, life in prison, of course, but there's almost this element of just being very simple, ordinary, and treating human beings as if they were plain objects. And then there's this other element of someone who still wants to show the world that he got away with it for as long as he did. And a lot of people were pointing out something that even had, I had even noticed, and that is that he sounds like, if you ever listen to this, he is talking about doing an ordinary day job, like the way that one of your coworkers would talk when they are confronted by their boss. Hey, what happened here? Oh, yeah, well, I pulled up the file and then I moved it into this folder and then I put it back in the desk and then I turned the key and I locked that desk and then I handed that back to this other guy. That's the way that he was approaching this. I was perhaps even a little bit more frantic than he is in this video in the full confession, and he's talking about murdering people, and somebody left the description saying that he sounds like he's talking about the instructions on how to bake a cake. I mean, showing absolute indifference to human life. And when it comes to BTK, I've never done a full episode about him here on this channel. I've mentioned him in some other episodes, but with BTK, I often compare him to Christian Bale's character in the movie American Psycho and the fictional serial killer Patrick Bateman, because there is this one scene in American Psycho where Christian Bale, playing Patrick Bateman, says, "But really, I'm not there." And I first saw American Psycho when I was 22 years old, well after it came out. Let's see, that would have been 2011. That had been 11 years after that movie had come out. And of course, it's based on a novel by Bret Easton Ellis. But I was like, how on earth could somebody say that? A fictional character or not? How can someone not really be there? And when I began learning about BTK a while ago, a couple years ago, and watching things and listening to podcasts about him, that's what it sounded like to me. Because BTK talked about something called cubing, where it's not that, okay, a serial killer puts on this nice, gentle facade for people, and then they unleash their destructive tendencies in the shadows. No, that is an oversimplification, and it's also a misrepresentation, because the way that BTK talked about it was he called it cubing, meaning that how many sides do you have on a pair of dice? 12, right? There are 12 different possibilities from snake eyes all the way to the double sixes. And that's what it was like. There are just 12 different roles that a person might play in their life. For example, when someone goes to work, they are a worker. When someone goes to a church, they are a churchgoer. And I think I could see some of that in the full confession video, because he's in the courtroom and he's supposed to give a confession, so he's just acting like somebody who is very eager and prompt and matter of fact and is just ready to talk about the activities that he did in his life, always playing a part. But really, I'm not there. And I do mean this. I do mean this indeed, because BTK was the first serial killer that I learned about that I really thought that message connected with. And somebody once requested an episode here on this channel if I would talk about the normal lives of serial killers. Like, how does a serial killer function in day-to-day life? How do they hide these types of destructive tendencies from the general public? And it's called just that, The Normal Lives of Serial Killers. It's one of the older black box recordings that has those sparks in the background. But the point is that we can be deceived by people, and it is absolutely not like the mask and then the true self. No, There are there is a much more complex nature to human behavior than there are just two sides of somebody's personality. And you, no matter who you are, I would expect that there are more than two sides to your personality. Oh, your nice side and your mean side? No way. I mean, even 12 sides to somebody's personality might not be enough. But based on his name, BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill, you can guess that he was a sadistic serial killer. Not only did he commit murders, he was also torturing the victims. Not only did he commit these crimes, but he also came up with codes for people to crack, taunting messages, saying that, showing off that not only was he able to commit crimes and not get caught for an extended period of time, but also that he was able to have this taunting, braggadocious element that you do see very frequently with serial killers. It's not just the Zodiac Killer, it's not just Jack the Ripper. I mean, you have somebody like David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, shootings, writing letters, taking credit for it. And I've also talked about the serial killer Maury Travis in the past, who tried that and got caught very easily. These things happen all the time. And that just goes to show you that there's some people that show a very strong indifference to human life. And it's almost as if, though, that the general public has a very hard time comprehending psychopathy and sociopathy. Like, whereas if someone actually is a clinical psychopath, then they are going to be not only indifferent to human life, but they're just not going to show any type of remorse or feeling or empathy or any of those features. Because I also did an episode about this called Sociopaths in the Media, another wonderful black box recording with the sparks in the background, where I pointed out how when people use the term sociopath in the media, they're often just referring to someone who is conventionally mean. Okay, they're completely equating sociopath with someone who's just a really big jerk. No, There's a huge difference between being a jerk and a sociopath. One of them is definitely more extreme. And right now, I would like to give just a moment to say rest in peace to all of the victims of BTK, Dennis Rader, and their names are the four members of the Otero family: Joseph Otero, Julia Otero, Joseph Otero Jr., and Josephine Otero, who were all murdered on January 15th of 1974. Catherine Bright, Shirley Ruth Vian Relford, Nancy Jo Fox, Maureen Hedge, Vicky Wagerly, and Dolores Johnson Davis. And the crimes went from 1974 to 1991, as previously stated. No matter what, I think all parties can agree that these people did not deserve to die. And on the last Zodiac Monday segment that I do, every Monday I do an episode about the Zodiac Killer here on this channel, I was reading off some comments from a different YouTube channel, and I don't want to make this an enormous habit looking at the comments section on other people's channels, but because this one is exclusively dedicated to BTK, the episode BTK full version was put out on the BTK site. I would like to read some of these comments, but first I want to point out that this YouTube channel has a very large amount of Dennis Rader videos. In addition to the full confession, there's also the sentencing video, and there are several videos that are close to an hour long talking about the individual murder victims of Dennis Rader, such as some of the names that I just read off there of Nancy Fox or Vicky Wagerly or Maureen Hedge. They are so there's going to be a lot of true crime info, and I definitely will be going through these more in the near future and perhaps do a response for Black Box Online Radio. But in the comments, Ralph says, "This is a true example of a psychopath that literally has no empathy for another human being. This is what evil truly looks like." And yes, but here's the problem, though. There is this misconception out there that a serial killer is just somebody who has no friends, who spends all of his time alone, who is just some type of social recluse, and maybe some people are like that. Maybe somebody like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was like that. But with BTK, he is a churchgoer, he's a scout leader, he is heavily involved with other people, and some other people have said this in the comments section as well. He just seems like an ordinary, outgoing guy. You would never know that he was a serial killer if you didn't know otherwise. And not only was a member of his church. He got promoted through the ranks and even entered into their leadership. And Thorn SC says, the fact that he has total recall of events that occurred 30 years prior to this video proves that he relived these murders in his mind over and over again. That's possible, Thorn, but with serial killers, they often have very strong memories, no matter who they are. Maybe not all of them, but Samuel Little, for example, the man who murdered over 90 people, he was able to recreate drawings of the victims with exquisite detail, remembering all of them, very strong memory. And as I understand it, again, just from watching YouTube videos, I can't even remember the doctor that I heard this from, but I think it was in 2019 when I saw it. He said that long-term memories are created when emotion connects with information. And even if a serial killer isn't someone whom you would think would be emotional, I think that there is definitely intensity connecting with information. And I did that one episode on the serial killer John Hughes, where he talked about how every second there's 100 thoughts in his mind at once, and only when he committed the murder was there only one single thought, or there's just that moment of mental clarity, or there is some type of focus that is elevated there, and then absolutely elevated intensity. And I'm sure that Dennis Rader, BTK, would be experiencing something like that. So you have somebody who not only is doing the whole intensity plus information, they also say about psychopaths that a psychopath uses 5% more brain activity than the average functioning human being. And I would expect that some of that is connected to memory. And if you'd like to hear more about that, I have an episode on this channel called The Neuroscience of Serial Killers, where I had the opportunity to sit down with a neuroscientist and talk about this. And that was her analysis, lots of black box recordings here on this channel. Back in 2020, I talked a lot about serial killers, and perhaps there'll be some more in the future. And this comment is from Chubby Oddball, who says, it's really creepy how well-spoken and matter-of-fact this monster is about it all. Most serial killers I've seen and heard clips of, you can immediately tell they are crazy. This guy sounds like any boring old man. And I definitely agree that some convicted murderers and serial killers show a little bit more of their deranged side, but I think that that would be exactly how somebody like BTK would have avoided suspicion and capture, and how he would have deceived everyone. Ted Bundy, for example, he is someone who also put on that very convincing presentation, making people think, well, there's just no way that this guy could actually be a serial killer, or even if he was, they were just so captivated by his presence and the entirety of the persona that he was sharing with him. And then you have other people like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, who was a little bit more brash, who was definitely more of a showboat, but again, he created somewhat of a likable energy for some people. I absolutely despise Richard Ramirez, and the reason why is because he was just a criminal thug who got out of control. I definitely think that he is a very bad person. Ted Bundy as well. I do not like serial killers. I want to be very clear about that because some people can't always tell in the comments section. I think that it's important to learn about humanity. I believe that it is important to understand all aspects of human nature, and what a lot of people want to do is they just want to put this do not enter sign up next to a large portion of science and psychology and all of these subjects. They're just turning a blind eye to it, the do not enter sign. I'm not going to go down that pathway. No, I'm not looking in that direction. But if we're going to learn about the world, about life, about who we are, then these types of questions need to be asked and answered. And that's why I talk about serial killers on this channel. And I think that's why you're listening to an episode like this one, even if you've made it this far into it. And there's a comment from Betty that says, why is everyone in the comments section surprised that BTK has no emotion? He got off on watching people die slowly. If he started crying, I wouldn't believe him anyway. It's a brilliant comment from Betty right there. And they talked about this very concept on a documentary that I watched about the Toolbox Killer. If anybody has the Peacock streaming service, there is a documentary out under just that name, The Toolbox Killer. That's how you can find it. And it talks about how a serial killer was admitting to crying while he was watching TV, and then the interviewer caught on that that was a ruse. It was something that was not sincere. He was lying and he was trying to dupe her and deceive her. And that is another big characteristic of psychopaths and sociopaths: manipulation. They want to manipulate. And I often cite this one interview that I watched from the channel SBSK when they were interviewing a clinical sociopath, and he just said, as soon as I meet somebody, I think of ways to manipulate them. And with Dennis Rader, it definitely appears that he is he is well carrying on with those types of behaviors and characteristics. But as far as getting off watching people die slowly, these were definitely sexually motivated crimes. And in the confession, Dennis Rader says very clearly that he was acting out sexual fantasies. And the judge even asked him, "Did you do that with all 10 of the murders that he was being convicted of? And was that always the motivation?" And he said yes. And I thought at first that he said the word patrolling, like patrolling for a victim, but I listened more closely, and I don't think he actually said trolling for victims, a variant of stalking. He also used the word stalking, and this is another thing that people were really bothered by, referring to victims as projects. He was talking about locking in on a victim, and then, I mean, just like murdering people is just an activity. It's like, okay, well, I guess when you're going to church, you need to act like a churchgoer, and when you are a serial killer, you need to act like a serial killer. That's that concept of cubing, right? Absolutely heinous, absolutely disgusting. But, I mean, he is a stalker. He is someone who is targeting people in multiple ways. And he even said, though, that there was at least one victim who was chosen at random. He was trolling or patrolling around looking for victims, and then he saw someone and locked in on her and decided that he was going to murder her. But the sexual component should not be downplayed, because with somebody like BTK, there are different types of serial killers out there. And if he is going to say that he is a sexually motivated serial killer, that is completely believable. However, with other serial killers, they are more cold, methodical, and calculating. They are not necessarily driven by sexual urges, and some people think that the Zodiac Killer had absolutely no sexual urge at all, and that's why there was just this infrequency in Zodiac activity, and it's only from 68 to 69, and other people think that the Zodiac was sexually motivated, but he wouldn't do some things like BTK did, masturbating at a crime scene and so on. Allie H. says he is silently gloating and is in love with telling his stories. You see, that's what I was thinking about too. Okay, he talks about his crimes like he's baking a cake or talking to the boss about some problem at work. There's just that element where he is silently gloating and just wants to show off to the world about what he has done. And there's a question actually from Pooh Bear who says, can you even imagine his wife or children listening to this confession? Heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. You know, that's true. That is heartbreaking, but can I imagine what it would be like if one of my family members turned out to be a serial killer? No. I've also never met or talked to a serial killer to the best of my knowledge, so I don't know what that would be like. I don't know what that would be like, because somebody else also asked the question, can you imagine what it would be like to be one of BTK's lawyers, or just the lawyer for any serial killer? No, I can't. I really can't, like having to defend somebody for that. And I know that lawyers are doing their jobs, and I don't hold it against them for anything like that, but I just can't even begin to comprehend that type of emotion. And with the Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo, they say that his family went to visit him when he was after he had been arrested, and he wouldn't even look at them, and he just said, "Get out." And what did that mean? That he didn't want them to see him in that humiliated state? Or did that mean that he was just using them as a facade throughout his entire criminal history. I don't know. Not a mind reader, not a psychic, but all we can do is guess. Paranoid Android says this dude is so disconnected from reality and empathy. It's terrifying people like this exist. But, Paranoid Android, what I thought was truly shocking was the number of serial killers out there. Because when I was growing up, of course they would talk to us about serial killers. By they, I mean my peers, my parents, the teachers. They would try to avoid all of that. I once told a story on this channel about how one of my teachers in elementary school told us the story of Charles Manson. Other than that, they mostly ignored them, and you would learn about them through the media. And there really is this place where certain serial killers have become very famous. And I've had numerous conversations with people about Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy and Ted Bundy growing up. And I do remember some of the news coverage about BTK being apprehended. However, I certainly was not paying attention with excellent detail. And I do remember that he wrote poetry as well. And maybe I can talk about that in a future episode. But it almost seemed like, well, that was just it. There just may be these 10 names that are around. Yeah, okay, even if you think of Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer, and John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, BTK. Okay, what did I just say? What, 5, 6 people? No. The thing that was truly shocking to me was how many serial killers exist. I've talked about so many of them here on this channel, whether it was Edward Wayne Edwards last week, or I recently did some episodes on Arthur Bomar, the Stone Cold Killer, and I've referenced the one that I've done on Roger Kibbe, the I-5 Strangler, and they're operating all over the country, and people are just murdering individuals at opportune moments, and it's absolutely sickening. And then sometimes you don't even know what to make of it. Sometimes you don't know if the person is confessing to crimes they actually committed, or other times you just don't know who to believe. But the frequency of serial killers operating is just quite shocking, and I often tell this story on the channel as well, but back in 2020, I was listening to the I'll Be Gone in the Dark podcast. Yes, there's a book out by that name and an HBO special, but they also made a podcast, and a lot of the episodes were uploaded onto YouTube. And when I was listening to that, someone who was interviewed said that when she was a teenager, she saw the map of John Wayne Gacy's house because he buried the majority of his victims' bodies in the crawl space underneath his house. And she saw this map of where all the bodies the bodies of the victims were buried. And when she was looking at that map, she thought to herself, this is not the world that my parents and teachers prepared me for. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why people turn to things like YouTube for learning about true crime, because they want to have a greater understanding of humanity, but also, again, everyone's turning that blind eye to these aspects of life that are very dangerous. Could that person that you saw at the supermarket be somebody like Dennis Rader? Absolutely. And what even goes to show you in this confession is just because somebody is a serial killer, it doesn't mean they're going to give away any of the predictable signs of what you would think a serial killer would be like. No matter what, no matter what you have conceptualized when you have thought of the term serial killer. No, a serial killer could be completely different. Some of them are homosexual and they only target in their own sexual orientation. Some are heterosexual and only target within their own sexual orientation. And then you have people like Dennis Rader who have male and female victims, old and young. And then there are people who are just completely methodical and calculating and go after victims because of places and locations, and they're trying to create criminal signatures. All kinds of all of this is real. All of these things actually happen. Now, with the unsolved cases, forcing a theory onto the subject might be a little bit more difficult, but these types of activities are real, and people are dangerous. People do very horrendous things, and it's up to us to learn about where where is the good and where is the bad in the world? Where is the good and where is the evil? It's our responsibility to ask and answer those questions. But I'm going to be doing a couple more episodes on BTK. Firstly, I had no idea that there were so many movies that had been made about him. I knew that there was a film called BTK, which was available on Tubi, but if you've ever watched the movie or read the book Red Dragon by Thomas Harris, one of the books featuring Hannibal Lecter, there's a character in it named Francis Dolarhyde, which was inspired by BTK before BTK was captured. And Red Dragon is the only novel from Thomas Harris that I have read. I watched all of those movies: Red Dragon, The Silence of the Lambs, and Hannibal. Okay, I take that back. I didn't watch Hannibal Rising, and but I did watch the show Clarice on CBS, which focuses on the Buffalo Bill storyline. It completely eliminates Hannibal Lecter. And then there is a season of Mindhunter based on BTK. There's a movie called The Clove Hitch Killer, which is currently out on Netflix. I just checked that one and just Googled it rather, and it came up saying that it was on Netflix because Bind, Torture, Kill. BTK was also the scout leader, and he taught his scouts how to tie knots. The Clove Hitch Killer. The Clove Hitch is a very practical Boy Scout knot. I'm an Eagle Scout, and one of the comments that I found, maybe the second or third one under that confession video, stated that someone said that he was actually one of the boys in Dennis Rader's Cub Scout pack. He was the Cub Scout den leader, and he said he taught me how to tie knots. I knew this guy. It's just absolutely horrible to think that he actually turned out to be a serial killer. And there's even a movie though called A Good Marriage based on the novella by Stephen King that has a storyline based on BTK. So lots of things there, and I'll be talking about some of those films tomorrow here on the channel. But also, I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode. And if there's any subject in the true crime world, or really any subject for the Anything Goes Friday segment, what would you like to hear about for a future episode? And please tune in this weekend for the Zodiac Killer BTK Connection episode. I would love to read your responses. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. My email is posted in the description box here, as well as my personal Facebook. There's also a Facebook page for the show, Black Box Online Radio, and of course, BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram. And I will see you over there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.